Oh,
giving
ये
me the
recording.
opportunity
Thank you,
and
sir.
giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you and your students. How is my sound quality first?
आवाज आ रही है आप लोगों को? कोई मसला
Yes,
वगैरह
ma'am.
है?
It's good. No, ma'am. We are hearing properly.
अच्छा,
Okay.
ठीक है.
ये प्रॉब्लम हो रही है, काफी लो है मैम.
आवाज कम आ रही है?
Yes, ma'am.
बाकी किसकी आवाज आ रही है? घर की आवाज म्यूट कर दें.
ये मुदस्सिर सर मैम.
No,
मुदस्सिर
it's not mine. No,
मुदस्सिर
it's not
की
mine.
नहीं मुदस्सिर की नहीं है, किसी और की है. सर ये कह रहे हैं कि थोड़ी सी आवाज कम आ रही है आपकी.
जी
हेलो.
जी मेरे एंड पे साउंड मैक्सिमम है. So how does it look like now?
सर
Sir,
मुझे
it's much better.
Okay, that's great. So if we could mute everyone else while I'm talking, I think that's going to be very helpful. And great. So can I also share my screen, Dr. Gulabsha?
जी सर मैंने अलाउ कर दिया है.
Okay, great. So I can see the tab here and
हेलो.
how is my sound quality now? Is it better than before?
Sir, it's perfect. We can listen you clearly.
Okay, that's great. I just want to make sure I do that because this is one of the learnings that we all have had during the last 2-3 months, that we keep checking with each other about the sound quality, just to make sure. And sometimes we also keep the video switched off, just to make sure that everyone can hear us well and all that. So if in between there is a sound issue or something, please pop up and let me know how things are going. So thank you very much, Dr. Gulabsha, for inviting me and talk about this very important subject, which is strategy, evaluation and control. Everybody has, everybody knows my background, as you just explained to them. So my name is Asim Rashid, and feel free to call me Asim. Before we talk about this, let's understand one very clear thing, that the subject of strategy is very interesting. It's probably one of those subjects that if 20 years later you come back to your education and ask yourself, what was the best subject that you took? Probably you are going to say strategy was the best, because strategy is a subject which encompasses everything. And all the other subjects, one way or the other, fall below this subject, which is a strategy. Now in strategy, I believe that the first step, which is the strategy formulation, is something you guys have already studied. Then we have the implementation part. And then finally, we come to evaluation and control, which actually tells us how the strategy is going and how are things moving, or whether they are moving in the right fashion or not. So we are at the evaluation and control phase, and I will just focus on that particular piece. So I will take a start with this famous quote of Peter Drucker, which says, what gets measured gets managed. But what I learned in my career is that we listen to these quotations, we listen to these words from wise people, but then we change it, then we amend it according to our perspective, according to our environment, according to our business, according to our culture. So the way I like to say it is, what gets measured gets done, right? And what gets measured gets better. what gets measured gets improved. And that's the whole essence of strategy, right? That when you develop the strategy, you formulate it, you implement it, you execute it, then you should be able to evaluate, control, and provide a feedback loop so that you come back and readjust your strategy and actually apply it again and test the outcomes, right? So that was a starter point. And from here, we come to this. I love case study method. So I'll take a start from here. Everybody probably can see this slide. And this is a slide about data available from a car manufacturer's annual report. And there are some parameters here. Of course, it's created, right? So it's a created name of Kamata. But the data, as you can see, is a real-time data. So what you see is this is a company which has probably developed a growth strategy. And if you look at the numbers of 3 years, you can see that the production capacity, which is the number of car units produced per annum, is increasing. In 2016, they created 105,000 cars, then 150,000 cars, and 200,000 cars. So they developed a growth strategy. Now, based on the data and the numbers that you see here, how do you evaluate the growth strategy? Because they must have formulated the strategy, then they must have implemented it. And now we are trying to evaluate and control and see how the strategy actually worked. So this is the data that I'm sharing with you, created data. What do you think about the growth strategy of Kamata? So probably you can unmute and comment.
Amjad,
Anyone?
Amjad, Ji
Uh,
Nazia.
yes, ma'am. We
There
believe
is a
that
change in a
they have been increasing their
दोनों
production
एक मिनट
capacity.
जी जी एक बोले जी अमजद.
Gee, I was saying that based on this data, we can only say that they have been increasing their production, but we need to know more about the parameters, whether they are opening up and going into a new market, or there could be many options. But by this, we can see that their production capacity is increasing based on multiple reasons that could be.
जी नाजिया.
According to the available data, we can say that the Kamata's growth strategy is like increase in the production capacity from year-wise from 2017 to 2018. But accordingly, based on the data only, we can evaluate on the base कैसे the production capacity change हो रही है, increase हो रही है.
Yeah, can you determine any growth strategy from this data? Because we have done growth strategies as well while we were studying corporate strategies. Can we determine just from this data?
I don't think so, ma'am. Not only just. I don't think so. Strategy. There is only change in the production capacity from 200,000 to as compared to 2017, which is 150. In change is at 25% approximately. So strategy, I can't suggest any. Yeah, cannot take any name for it. There is only change in the production capacity. I don't think so.
Okay, so we have had two. Gigi, sure.
Okay, so based on the matrices that we have, for example, there can be multiple strategies like market penetration, market development, but based on the data, because we don't know whether these cars are different models or this is just one single model that they are producing and they are like producing a greater number of it. So if we have more data, then we can comment on what kind of strategy they are following, though they are going towards growth. But it's quite difficult to determine. Apart from this, we need to know the environmental factors and other things that may involve economy, population, if they are operating in a certain country. So we need more data to comment on proper strategy that the company is following.
Okay, that's great. So, but based on this data, what do we conclude from here? What's one thing that you can conclude from this data about their strategy?
So one thing is that it is continuously improving in production, but we don't have any industry analysis, so we can't say that accordingly with the comparison of other organizations or competitors. But we can say that its production is increasing, capacity increasing, from year to
Okay,
year.
that's a great point. So
But
when we look
one
at,
thing can be concluded.
जी रोशना.
yes, please.
जी. But one thing can be concluded from the data that मतलब जितना data ये है तो so this data reveals that they are trying to increase their market share. मतलब like keeping everything else constant. What this data is revealing, this data reveals that they are trying to increase their market share, keeping the
So,
population and everything else that Amjad mentioned constant.
okay, that's a great point. So basically what we can conclude from data is that number one, they're increasing their production, and probably
Thank you.
you're welcome. They're trying to get, up in the market in terms of capacity to become so here is another data point. Now, what is changing and what is happening now? Based on this data, what you can see?
So their sales have been increasing over the years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Earlier in the previous slide, we saw that they have been increasing their production capacity only. It's not about whether they were producing that much or not, but here we can see that they have actually grabbed the market share. Their sales have basically increased. So we can actually quantify in terms of returns that the company has managed to grab.
Okay, that's good.
I wanted to say that the production capacity is increasing from 2017 to 2018 is 25%, while the sales in a billion is not increasing at the same ratio or having an increase in the ratio in a nominal values. So it's only 20%. So we can say is production 25%, but the sales are less than it. It's only 20%.
That's an excellent observation. Gee, anyone else? Gee, we want to hear more from everyone, especially those who haven't spoken yet.
खालिक आप कुछ कंट्रीब्यूट करना चाहेंगे?
मैम खालिक ने मैसेज किया कि उसको आवाज मतलब उसकी आवाज हमारे तक नहीं पहुंच रही, तो उसने मैसेज में जो है वो चैट्स में जो है उसने वो एक रिप्लाई ड्रॉप किया है, उसकी आवाज हमारे तक नहीं पहुंच रही, तो
अनम को आवाज आ रही है? अनम को आवाज आ रही है?
मैम अनम का माइक नहीं काम कर रहा।
अच्छा जी आमिर।
वेल मैम अब्दुल खालिक का रिप्लाई है, कैन आई से?
जी जी।
अच्छा
वो कह रहे हैं कि that I interrupt this data, I can see its production capacity is increasing. Based on this, the market is saturating, according to him, Abdul Khalik.
Okay, that's a great observation. So Abdul Khalik feels that while the production capacity is increasing, the sales is not increasing from the same ratio. Probably market is saturating. That's a great observation.
Yes.
Gee, anyone else?
No, I'm saying that yes, you are right, sir.
Okay, so what
almost their sale I think sale is decreasing, sir. After 17 and 18 sale is decreasing.
So after 17 and 18 sales is actually decreasing in the real terms,
yes.
Right? In the real terms. Okay. Gee, anyone else? Okay. So एक point आया था पहले, which was very interesting, and the point was that you are moving from 105,000 production units to 150,000, an increase between 40 and 50% in production capacity. But when you look at the increase in sales, that's just from 2 to 2.5. That's not proportional. So between these 2 years, your production capacity has increased more than 90%. But your sales has increased by 50%, right? So production capacity has increased by 100%, but your sales has increased by 50%. So something doesn't make sense. And you can always say that, yes, I can see growth in the capacity. That means somebody is investing in the plant, but probably the market is either tanking or something is going wrong. And I need to see more of information, more of data.
Yes, sir.
Gee. So now you have another data point. Now take a look at that, and let's talk about Kamata's growth strategy. This is the net income, which is the net profit in percentage.
Now, here we can see that they are not actually growing, but their growth has decreased. So there could be multiple factors behind that, but based on the data that we can see that earlier we were noticing that they were like having growth in terms of production capacity, still in revenue. But if we see the net income in terms of percentage, they are not actually growing.
So if we see the net income percentage, it looks that they are not growing. Okay. Anyone else?
Actually, sir, it seems like they are increasing their production capacity, but along with that, their sales is not increasing at that level. So there could be the reason that in order to this could be the reason that in order to increase their market share or in order to penetrate into the market more, they are reducing their price of the products, and the reduction in
No,
the price results in
it's not.
decrease
It
in
could.
sales. Yes.
It's not necessary
Yes,
that
sir.
the price would have decreased, but they would have like
Actually, I
made
think
expenses or invested in so many things. For example, if you are increasing your production capacity, you might need to invest into that. And sometimes what companies do, they go for a long-term plan. For example, if I'm going to increase my production capacity, I'll keep in mind a 10-year plan, that what would be demand in 10 years, because it's not in every year that I could get a new
No.
plant manufactured.
Yes, Amjad, that could be the
So
reason.
sometimes
That could be another reason. But
at one point in time, we need to invest a lot, and we might not get much return in terms of sales or net income, but it
in
might be
short
into the
run.
long-term plan. So one of the reasons that net income could be lower is due to the expenses that they have made due to the investments.
yeah, because we can say that there are some kind of expenses now for evaluating this net income. There is a decrease from 4.5 to 3.7. It means that we also knows that there is a difference between sales and a net income, and in between of these there are the portion of expenses. Now we have to see that whether their expenses are increases as compared to previous years.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
and so for the comparison of it, we can say that net income decreases maybe due to the increase of the production capacity. They have also some kind of took some expenses, long term expenses maybe, or
Yes.
some short term expenses as well, but it will be showed according to the if we display the see the expenses data,
I mean,
we
not
can
not
say
not
that
only not
expenses.
only we can't actually judge based on just expenses. We need to actually dissect those. We need to know whether those are operating expenses or those are investment
Capital
kinds of
expenses.
expenses. So
Yeah,
we
we
need to
can say
see
that there are
dissected data.
subcategories of expenses that whether they are operating or a long term or something else. But in general, the net income is decreases with the even production capacities increases, sales also increases, but the net income proportion is also decreases. How? So there is a change between in expenses. Maybe in a general terminology, we can say that there is some kind of a cost that company is bearing in 2018, which was not in 2017 or 2016.
So I want to confirm one thing before
Maybe
commenting further. Is whether this production capacity reflects the cars produced in that year, because the production capacity is another thing and the cars they produce in that year is another thing, because the cars they produce would reflect the revenues and the net income rather than the production capacity only.
Great discussion. Great discussion. So let me ask you another question right here. So think about a company which is doing a sales of, let's say, $1 billion, right? And their margin is, let's say, 10%. So on $1 billion, they earn around 10%, or roughly around 10%, right? Now, this company moves from $1 billion of sales to $2 billion of sales, right? And their margin instead of 10% becomes 5%, but their sales is doubled. So what would you say? I mean, percentage margin has reduced, but at the same time, the margin dollars are the same. Has this company grown or not? You get my point, right?
Yes, sir. So, like just said that the companies where the sales are increasing, but the net income is less, or yeah, as you said that the margin is very less, or is decreasing from 10% to 5%. That the reason could be like they are investing in the long-term growth strategies. So, in the short run, we can say that they are not growing that much in terms of income, in terms of margin, they are not growing. But in terms of sales, in terms of the market share, they are growing. So in the long run, they will be getting more profit and more margin. That could be the reason. So this is how I
Okay.
am seeing this.
Okay. So if I ask you a question here that you have formulated a strategy for this company and this company has implemented that and now they are in the phase of evaluation and control and this is the data and you are the consultant, you are the advisor who is supposed to take a look at this data and give them an advice about what are the areas that they need to look at. And based on this information, what feedback would you like to provide them in terms of making a change somewhere in their strategy? Because you know it's all about evaluation and control, and then a feedback so that you can reformulate your strategy and again apply it so that you learn whether it's working fine or not. So what feedback would you like to give to this company, Kamata?
Along with this data, we would ask them that what kind of strategy were they following or what they were trying to do, because all we are doing is at this moment is making assumptions that the company follows the growth prospects of their production capacity, but still that is not being reflected in revenues or net income. So first of all, we need to know that what actually that company is trying to do along with this data to make some comment on it or feedback or give some feedback.
Okay, anyone
Can I
else?
share something, sir?
Yes, please,
Nazia.
anyone.
According to the data and all that, after as a consultant, I will say that the sales only reflects the market share. As you are increasing your market share, it is also known as external environmental factor. So you are increasing, you are on a growth path, but accordingly, from the perspective of net income, which shows your financial condition of a year, of a 1 year, it shows that your net income is decreases. It is maybe there are some kind of receivables that are still on your side that you should have to be taken from the market and turn it into another maybe into your cash flows, maybe turn to it so your net income can be increases. Another thing is that they have to make a strategy related to the internal environment of their own company, related to expenses, to cover all the expenses, because you had given us the data, the next data that you had described us is about the sales, $1 billion to $2 billion. If there is a change in a sales, then we can say that there is some kind of a financial problem or some kind of a financial situation that company should have to pop up with to increase its net income comparison to its sales, it increase in the market share.
हेलो,
जी
मेरी आवाज
खालिद।
आ रही है सर?
जी
जी
खालिद।
सर अगर हम इस डेटा को एनालाइज करें तो मतलब ये डेटा हमें प्रोडक्शन की कैपेसिटी बता रही है, ठीक है, और उसकी हम नेट इनकम अगर देखें, कभी कभी ये होता है कि मतलब कि एक साल में अगर दूसरे साल में कंपनी शिफ्ट होती जा रही है, उसके मतलब ईयर्स ग्रोइंग हो रहे हैं, तो ये होता है कि कंपनी ऐसा करते हैं कि अपनी रिसर्च और डेवलपमेंट कास्ट बढ़ा देती है, तो उसकी वजह से या इन्फ्लेशन की वजह से जो हमारे नेट इनकम पे इफेक्ट पड़ जाता है। तो बेस्ड ऑन दिस डेटा हम एनालाइज या जज नहीं कर सकते कि ये कंपनी ग्रोइंग फेज में है या ये कंपनी मतलब लॉस में जा रही है या पीक लेवल पे या मैक्सिमम प्रोडक्शन यूज कर रही है। तो इससे हम ये ले सकते हैं कि इसके जो एक्सपेंस हैं वो बढ़ गए हैं एज कम्पेयर टू प्रीवियस एक्सपेंस। जैसे कि रिसर्च और डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंस बढ़ सकता है कंपनी के लिए कि अगर वो ग्रोइंग कर रही है या दूसरी मार्केट सैचुरेट कर रही है, तो उसकी वजह से इसके नेट इनकम इस साल में कम आ गए हैं।
ओके, तो आपको अगर ये कंपनी बुलाए और कहे कि आप हमें एडवाइस करें तो आप कौन सा डेटा देखना चाहेंगे? आप कौन सा डेटा देखना चाहेंगे? Which data would you like to see?
As an investor, I'll see the net income data.
Sir, we would like to see industry standards at the very first, how industry is moving, how other companies are moving as well, what is the total production in that particular country where the company is operating, and what share is that company having in that particular country. So, industry standards, if possible, if we could get access to competitors' data from their annual reports, we can get access to that. So we would also like to see that. Apart from this, we would like to get some qualitative data from the managers to see what they have been doing earlier and what they are actually looking forward to do. So these kinds of data will be necessary in order to comment something. Definitely, we'll need to have a look at the expenses, what they have done, and how they have been doing. So these things will be necessary to actually make a comment and give a feedback to the company in order to moving forward.
Okay, so the company has shared one more piece of data with you. Take a look at that and try to see, can you make another conclusion here?
इससे हम ये कह सकते हैं कि कंपनी अगर अपने एम्प्लॉइज बढ़ा रही है, इसका मतलब ये है कि अपने डिपार्टमेंट्स बढ़ा रही है इसकी कंपनी के, तभी इसका जो एम्प्लॉय का टर्नओवर रेशियो है वो ज्यादा है एज कम्पेयर टू प्रीवियस ईयर से।
और या
जी आमिर
जी another things which can we can observe that in this 2018 the number of employees has
खालिक
also
आप
increased।
खालिक आपके बैकग्राउंड से बहुत आवाजें आ रही हैं खालिक आप
जी जी
जी आमिर आप
हाँ जी मैडम जो ये 5000 एम्प्लॉय इंक्रीज हुए हैं 2018 में, दिस कैन आल्सो बी बिकॉज ऑफ द कास्ट व्हिच मींस ट्रिगर द नेट इनकम लो, बिकॉज जब भी एम्प्लॉयज बढ़ते हैं तो द कास्ट ऑफ एम्प्लॉयज रेम्यूनरेशन इज इंक्रीज, so it would be the burden on the expenses which reduce the net income in 2018. So we can say that we should also keep as much employees as we need rather than means excess employees.
सर आमिर की पॉइंट में मैं कंसल्ट कर रहा हूँ इसलिए कि आमिर ने कहा कि एम्प्लॉय बढ़ रहे हैं तो हमारे नेट इनकम पे इफेक्ट आ रहा है। एक्चुअली ये बात नहीं है आमिर, क्योंकि जैसे जैसे किसी भी कंपनी के एम्प्लॉयज बढ़ते हैं तो उसका मतलब ये है कि उसकी प्रोडक्शन लेवल, उसके डिपार्टमेंट्स बढ़ते जा रहे हैं, तभी तो वो अपने एम्प्लॉयज को बढ़ा रहे हैं।
प्रोडक्शन बढ़ रही है, नेट इनकम कम हो रही है।
अब्दुल खालिक वो आमिर का
तो हमें दूसरे एक्सपेंसेस का डेटा चाहिए।
हाँ एग्जैक्टली दूसरे एक्सपेंसेस का डेटा
इससे कॉन्ट्रडिक्ट कर रहा है।
सर वही
इनकम का एम्प्लॉयज के साथ
डेटा आपको चाहिए?
हाँ एक और डेटा चाहिए, एम्प्लॉयज का नहीं है। एम्प्लॉयज का अगर देखा जाए फ्रॉम द अकाउंटिंग पर्सपेक्टिव, एम्प्लॉयज की सैलरीज होती है, सैलरीज पेएबल, हमारे एम्प्लॉयज नंबर ऑफ एम्प्लॉयज इंक्रीज हो रहे हैं और नेट इनकम कम हो रही है, इवन प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी भी इंक्रीज है। इट मींस कि नेट इनकम को भी बढ़ना चाहिए। मींस देयर इज मतलब कुछ ना कुछ मिसिंग है, डेटा भी मिसिंग है जो इस सिचुएशन को पूरे तरीके से डिफाइन करे।
But Abdul Khalik said that production capacity is increasing and their employees are also increasing. It might happen that you are increasing your employees and your production capacity, but the ratio of sales is not increasing along with that increased production capacity and the employees. Like the ratio of employees and production capacity is more increasing at higher rate than the ratio that increases in sales. So ये reason हो सकता है कि sales
I
are
have
increasing.
I have one observation. If we look at the number of employees being increased from 2016 to 2017, that is 75%. But if you look at the production capacity, that is 42%. And compared to that, from 2017 to 2018, the company has increased the number of employees by 42%, with 33% increase in the production capacity. So one of the observations is that the company might be hiring people for like supporting their production, supporting their assembly lines in order to produce more. But the proportion is less compared to that of the production capacity. So I don't think that the production capacity has had much impact on the expenses, because the proportion that is like being increased, the number of employees and production capacity, that is different. So the companies might hire more people in future based on the cost to produce, based on the demand that is generated. But they do have to look at their income and other profiles to do so.
Okay, that's great. Have you also made one observation as Peter Drucker said in the beginning, what gets measured gets managed. That the moment you get hold of data, whether it's financial data, whether it's operational or production oriented data, it generates a lot of discussion and debate, right? So please remember that our conversation today is not a finance conversation. We are not discussing finance specifically today. We are into strategy, evaluation, and control. But unless we do not bring in numbers into discussions and conversations, it is very hard to stimulate the brains of the people in the room, right? And that's where a lot of minds start to, uh, operate on creative flows and try to generate an idea. Also, one suggestion here that every time you practically get to see one more piece of data, we get into the tendency of just looking at that piece. I think that's the time when we should be giving ourselves a reality check, and we should also look up. That means try to look at the data from a holistic point of view, overall point of view, rather than looking at the fresh piece of information. And otherwise that is going to kind of carry away your mind and bias it towards somewhere else. So every time you get a new piece of information, okay, understand it, but then go back and look at the entire data in totality and define. Another observation is that, as you transition from academic world or educational world into practical world, I think one of the things that counts is that where you are trying to say, I need to see more data. Well, that doesn't work in the real world, right? I need to see industry analysis. Well, your client is going to look at you as an industry expert, and they are going to say, well, you come and tell me what's the best practice in the industry. So you have to go with your own preparation, whether you are an employee in the company or whether you are a consultant. And the next thing is that when you say, I want to see more data, what data? I want to see expenses. What expenses? I mean, there is CAPEX, there is OPEX, and then there is employee data, there is salary data. Uh, there is some data which is sensitive, confidential, and probably they cannot even be shared, right? It can be shared in ballpark numbers and all that. So when you go to the client, or when you are working in your own company or organization, whether it's a startup or whether it's a job, you have to be very specific and precise what you need to see. And how you develop that skill? Yeah, you develop that skill by virtue of experience, by virtue of practice and all that, right? So don't think that you will just jump out of a campus and start to ask the right question and look at the right set of data. It's the experience and the practice and the more and more work that you do that that allows you to get into the right side of mindset and get to the data. Now take a look at this final piece and tell me if you can solve the puzzle somehow, somewhat.
So what's your question? Can you repeat your question, sir?
This is the final piece of information I just shared, employee development expenditure.
Right.
Take a look at these numbers also, make an observation what is happening with this piece of information, and then look at the entire picture and tell me if there is something interesting that you have discovered overall.
Right, sir. सर अगर इसको डेटा को हम एनालाइज करें तो बेसिकली डेटा हमें मतलब कि कार इंडस्ट्री कमाडास की प्रोडक्शन को डिफाइन कर रही है कि उसकी प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी क्या है, उसके इंटरनल सेल्स वगैरह कैसे है, यूनिट्स हैं, और जिसकी सबसे पहले जो अच्छा यूनिट्स है एम्प्लॉइज का, जो एम्प्लॉइज के बढ़ रहे हैं उसके ऊपर जो कंपनी अपने एम्प्लॉइज के ऊपर डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर कर रही है। तो ओवरऑल इसे देखें कि ये जो फर्म है, जो कंपनी है, ये ग्रोइंग फेज में है, ठीक है। ये मार्केट अपनी कैप्चर करना चाहती है, जो मतलब इसकी टारगेट मार्केट फुली कैप्चर नहीं है। एज पर माय एनालिसिस तो ये कंपनी ग्रोइंग फेज में है।
ओके।
क्योंकि इसके एम्प्लॉइज भी बढ़ रहे हैं और ये कंपनी अपने एम्प्लॉइज के ऊपर खर्चा भी कर रही है, उसकी ट्रेनिंग्स वगैरह अरेंज कर रही है, वो मतलब कि जो बची हुई मार्केट है उसको भी कैप्चर कर सकें, और जो इसके जो कॉम्पिटिटर्स हैं मार्केट में, ताकि उन कॉम्पिटिटर को भी मतलब कि ये फेस कर सकें। ऐसा ना हो कि उसके एम्प्लॉय मतलब ऐसे हो जो मतलब छोड़ के चले जाओ, ट्रांजेक्शन इतना इसका बढ़ जाए कि अपने एम्प्लॉयज को रिटेन भी कर रही है, उसकी डेवलपमेंट भी कर रही है और ये ग्रो भी कर रही है।
Okay.
Nazia,
It's actually
Muzammil.
a long-term expenditure. We can say that it's a long-term expenditure that at this moment they are not getting the return from this expenditure, but in long term they'll be getting some expenditure. They'll be definitely getting much return from this expenditure.
मुजम्मिल, मुजम्मिल आप कुछ कंट्रीब्यूट करेंगे? आवाज आ रही है आपको?
Ma'am, Irshad is saying that operating expenses are increased. अभी इनका मैसेज मिला है.
अनम बात नहीं कर रही.
अनम का वॉइस का गैस इशू है, तो वो टेक्स्ट कर दें.
Okay, can I say something?
जी अमजद.
Okay, I see that from 2016 to 17, we see that employee development expenditure has decreased, like from 20 million to 18 million, and then suddenly it jumps to 21 million. But let's see what employees are those, whether those are the production team, the main technical workers, or that is the marketing that actually do the sales. So if we see that that reduction in the employee development expenditure has impacted on the sales team in performance, in their performance in making the sales that is generating us the revenue. And then a sudden increase from 18 to 21. So the company got to know something at this point, that the sudden decrease in our net income from 5 to 4.5 it is due to the development expenditure that we have done less for the employee. So then they suddenly jumped to 21, and they thought that that might have some impact on our sales, but that still did not have impact. The company's net income still went down from 4.5 to 3.7. So the employee development is not the thing that is going to aid them holistically. They have to look at other metrics as well in order to grab that particular share and increase their income.
Okay, so one question, or please let me just clarify one thing, that everyone should be able comfortably to speak and do not worry about right and wrong answers, right? So just come on the discussion, join the discussion and speak up your mind. You're not graded here probably, right? So don't worry. अपना thought process share करें, don't worry. The employee development expenditures, say, what do you understand from this? 20 and then 18 and then 21. And look at the number of employees. अगर आप सिर्फ इन दो data points को मिला के देखें, employee and employee development expenditure, just look at the bottom two rows. इससे कुछ समझ में आता है आपको कि क्या हो रहा है organization?
Sir ji, from these two lines, it is shown that the organization is not means expenditure on the employees. Because of that, their efficiency is decreasing. Because when we compare overall 2018 data, तो ये बता रहे हैं कि जो हमारे जब 200,000 हमारी प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी है, then our employees are producing, means one employee is producing only 40 units. But when we were expenditure on 2016 on employees, so they were producing 42 units per employees. It means जब हम एक्सपेंडिचर कम कर रहे हैं तो उनकी इफिशिएंसी कम हो रही है, जिसकी वजह से हमारी कास्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन बढ़ रही है और नेट इनकम हमारी कम हो रही है.
Okay, great point. G, anyone else?
I think there is one more thing need to be considered: the capital expenditure. Capital expenditure is not doing because to increase the production capacity, we must have been incurred some capital expenditure, and that capital expenditure may be the reason of this low net income.
Okay. Okay. Gee, anyone else? Okay, so I understand thinking is hard work, right? I think आप में से बहुत से लोग realize कर रहे होंगे कि thinking is very hard work, or when you try to think, you start to get tired, right? So you need some motivational energy. to keep thinking. Thinking is hard work. That's why a lot of people don't like to think. um, you see, अगर आप employees का जो data है इसको मिला के देखने की कोशिश करें, तो आप एक चीज नोट करेंगे that the number of employees has moved from 2000 to 5000, but at the same time, when they were having 2000 employees, they used to invest $20 million in their development, in their learning, in their training, etc. But when they increased the number of employees from 2000 to 3500, the employee development expenditure was actually reduced. It was reduced, right?
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, अब आप थोड़ा सा ऊपर जाएं top line की तरफ and try to see that you have increased the production capacity, right? Then when you increase the production capacity, you bring probably new assembly lines on the floor. And since it's a very fast changing world, what happens is that if you buy something today and within months later, if you go to the same manufacturer and buy the piece of equipment, the technology actually changes. Many times older technologies are replaced by new softwares. And that means you have to upgrade the employee from a learning and development and training perspective on the new machines. तो लगता कुछ ऐसे है कि कैपेसिटी तो बढ़ रही है, बट एम्प्लॉइज के ऊपर जो डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर है कंपनी वो कम करती चली जा रही है, राइट? और वो शायद इसलिए कर रही है कि अगेन नाउ लुक एट लाइन नंबर 2, that because the sales is not increasing as they were expecting. So जैसा कि आप आज की कोविड-19 की दुनिया में भी देख रहे हैं कि सबसे पहला काम लोगों ने क्या किया when they saw that the sales is not coming as per expectation, what was step number 1 that most of the companies took in the world in COVID-19?
Made of their
एम्प्लॉयज को निकाला गया,
एम्प्लॉइज को
ऑफ किया गया, एम्प्लॉयज को ले ऑफ किया गया है, काफी सारों को जो अंडर द कैपेसिटी थे या एवरेज थे उनको निकाल दिया गया.
जी
Downsizing,
सर
layoff.
जी
And
exactly.
another thing is that if I will say कि employees development expenditure देखा जाए calculation के हिसाब से on a per employee, तो वो पहले में 1.01 है, and then इसे year to 2017 में भले आपकी employees बढ़ रहे हैं, ठीक है, लेकिन आपका जो एक्सपेंडिचर है वो 0.01 से 0.005 हो रहा है, और देन अगेन नेक्स्ट ईयर देखे जाए 2018 में इट्स अगेन 0042. तो भले यहाँ पे हमें ऑन द होल कम्युलेटिवली ये इंक्रीज दिखा रहा है, लेकिन पर एम्प्लॉय के ऊपर जो ये एक्सपेंडिचर करते हैं एम्प्लॉय डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर में, वो विद द इंक्रीज ऑफ द ईयर, विद द इंक्रीज इन द कैपेसिटी, वो डिक्रीज करते चले जा रहे हैं. वो अपने एम्प्लॉयज पे इतना इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर रहे एम्प्लॉय डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर पे जितना इन लम सम यहाँ पे शो हो रहा है.
Exactly. So this is a great observation, and what I was trying to show to you is कि हमने पहले इस डेटा को इंडिविजुअलिटी में देखा, and then we try to link the pieces together so that we can form the solution for the puzzle. और अगर आप नीचे से ऊपर की तरफ जाएं and then you look at production capacity and then you look at the sales and then you look at the net income, then you will find that the company has probably got stuck in a vicious circle. जैसा कि मुझे याद है that you know in some of my past experiences I always used to hear a debate that should I set up the company and hire people first, or should I wait for the first purchase order from a client and then I build the company? So the chicken and the egg thing, what do I do first? So that's a very challenging situation and it's a huge dilemma, but at the end of the day it's all about making a decision based on the data from external market, internal company point of view and all that, right? So the point I was trying to make here is that uh, you cannot just look at net profit of a company. You cannot just look at the sales numbers. You cannot just look at the front end numbers. You have to go a little deeper before you can make decisions about evaluation and control of a strategy. A lot of people just like to look at some of the key parameters that are the front end parameters. Those are the financial parameters. But again, जैसा कि आपने इस example से देखा, that in order to understand a company, you have to pull a lot of pieces together. And only that's where you get into the solution. Now, if it is so simple, then why a lot of companies are unable to do it? Anybody should be able to see all the data and solve the puzzle. So why companies generally do not understand the problem very well? इसकी क्या वजह होती है आपके ख्याल में from a strategic perspective?
क्योंकि डीप एनालिसिस नहीं करते वो डेटा को. आई थिंक सो कि हम जनरल नंबर्स के ऊपर जाते हैं या कम्युलेटिव डेटा के ऊपर जा रहे होते हैं, लेकिन हम पैटर्न नहीं ढूंढ रहे होते। अगर हम पैटर्न आइडेंटिफाई कर लेंगे तो देन हम प्रॉब्लम भी सॉल्व कर लेंगे कि इसे कैसे सॉल्व करना है। फर्स्ट थिंग फर्स्ट कौन सी होगी। अगर हम ऐसे ही कैलकुलेशन नहीं करें, अगर मैंने ये नहीं देखा होता एम्प्लॉय डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर इन जनरली देखा जाए तो 21, 18, 20 ये शुरू में इंक्रीज और बाद में शुरू में 2016 से 2017 डिक्रीज और फिर इंक्रीज होता हुआ नजर आ रहा है। अगर इस फिगर को लेके चलते तो शायद हमें पता ना चलता, लेकिन हमने एक्चुअली जब पर एम्प्लॉय के साथ इस एक्सपेंडिचर को मिलाया तो पता चला कि ये विद द पैसेज ऑफ द टाइम ये डिक्रीज होता चला जा रहा है पर एम्प्लॉय के ऊपर। तो आई थिंक ये हमें पैटर्न नहीं मालूम होता कि हमें किस चीज को पहले सॉल्व करना है।
Then
सर
again, the problem might not be at the formulating stage at the time of analysis that जब हम analysis कर रहे हैं and we are seeing के हमारे पास data है and what kind of results we are getting. Most of the time the problem is in implementation stage. You have the data, you made a strategy, but somehow you were unable to implement it properly to generate those results. Again, the improper implementation led to the worst results, and you were thinking that there was a problem in your analysis, there was a problem in your formulation, that strategy wasn't good, but the problem might be in implementation phase. So things might be different, a perspective might be different. So it will be good to see or evaluate on the way we say that strategic surveillance. When we talk about that, we look at each and every stage where our strategy is lagging behind, and then we need to pick it up from that point.
Yeah, I also
सर
agree
दूसरी
with
बात इसमें ये
Amjad,
है कि
because the research also says that 70% of the problems happen due to implementation. So
Exactly.
before
Even some papers say that 90%, and they talk
based
about
on
why
objective
strategies fail and why that number is exaggerated.
yeah.
मैं यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा कॉन्ट्राडिक्ट करूंगी मैम, सॉरी, बट मैं समझती हूँ कि अगर कोई भी चीज इम्प्लीमेंट करनी है, आपको एम्प्लॉय से करानी है, देन देयर शुड बी स्ट्रांग कम्युनिकेशन, इंफॉर्मेशन। उनको बताएं कि हम क्या चाहते हैं, उनको बताएं हम क्या स्टैंड कर रहे हैं, और उन्हें ये भी बताएं कि प्रॉब्लम लाए क्यों करती है। अक्सर लोग इम्प्लीमेंट इसलिए नहीं करते क्योंकि आपका कहा हुआ उन्हें बेमायना महसूस होता है।
And see, that could also be reflected from this data. So the real people.
Yeah, नाज़िया, the communication एक तो formulation stages पे जो हो गई, implementation में भी तो communication होती है ना, when you are getting implemented the strategy.
बट इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के स्टार्टअप में भी अगर हम उन्हें प्रॉपरली कम्युनिकेट इन देयर वे करें, और दूसरा ये है कि हम स्ट्रेटजी ईयर बाय ईयर बहुत ज्यादा बना रहे होते हैं। हमें फ्रंट लाइन के लिए जरूरी है क्योंकि उन्हें सिर्फ शॉर्ट टर्म देखना होता है कि ये टारगेट है, ये अचीव करना है, इतना टाइम है। तो अकॉर्डिंगली जैसे उनकी टाइमलाइन जैसे काम करती है, हमें वैसे ही स्ट्रेटजी उनको बताते चले जाना चाहिए हमारे मैनेजर्स को विद द पैसेज ऑफ टाइम। हम एकदम से उन्हें सब कुछ बता देंगे, वो भी बिल्कुल ठीक नहीं है। उन्हें कुछ चीजें समझ नहीं आएंगी, ऊपर से निकल जाएंगी। तो उनकी लैंग्वेज में उनके टारगेट्स को स्टेप बाय स्टेप कम्युनिकेट करना, स्टेप बाय स्टेप इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के स्टेज पे जरूरी होता है। स्टार्टिंग में सही है मैम, कम्युनिकेट करना होगा, बट ड्यूरिंग इम्प्लीमेंटेशन मेरे ख्याल से ये रिवर्स होता रहेगा जब हमें हमारे डिजायर्ड रिजल्ट्स नहीं मिलेंगे।
Ma'am, I want to say something. Sometimes when we actually go for implementation, so in formulation stage we might devise new strategies, new layouts, new processes. So the people that are actually going to implement that strategy are your employees, and in order to make them learn new strategies, new processes, you need to train them. So if you look at the statement as said that the number of employees is increasing, but their development expenditure is decreasing. So if you are going to implement some new strategy, you need to train, you need to motivate, even sometimes you need to like give bonuses or remunerate properly, compensate your employees. So the company might have a good strategy to go with, but they are not paying enough to their employees. They are not making enough contribution in their career development. They are not making enough contribution in their training and development to actually like motivate them and try to implement those processes successfully.
Actually,
So there are problems from implementation where that is coming from.
जी मुजम्मिल
एम्प्लॉय डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर का जो इशू यहाँ पे रेस किया गया, मेरे ख्याल से ये इशू नहीं है, क्योंकि जो हमारे पास बेस्ड ऑब्जेक्टिव है वो ये है कि हमारी नेट इनकम डिक्रीज हो रही है, जबकि हमारी प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी 2016 से 2018 तक ऑलमोस्ट डबल हो चुकी है, लेकिन हमारी सेल्स जो हैं वो 2016 से 2018 के टर्म्स में तकरीबन 1.5 है, डबल नहीं हुई। और जो नेट इनकम है हमारी वो हमारी पहले 2016 में अराउंड 5% थी और अब हमारी जो है वो 3.7% हो गई। एम्प्लॉय हमारे बढ़ते चले जा रहे हैं और जो एम्प्लॉय डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर है वो हमारा पर एम्प्लॉय वन सेकंड मैं कंप्लीट करूं जस्ट वेट अ मिनट
हेलो
मुजम्मिल को बात
तो
पूरी करने
जो
दें।
एम्प्लॉय डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर है अब वो पर एम्प्लॉय के लिहाज से कम हुआ है। अब हम ये देख रहे हैं कि हमारे पास मसला कहाँ पे है। हम नेट इनकम को बढ़ाना चाह रहे हैं। अब ये दो तरीकों से बढ़ सकती है। एक तो हम सेल्स को इंक्रीज करें, ठीक। दूसरा हम अपने एक्सपेंसेस को कम करें। जहाँ पे हमने बात की एम्प्लॉय डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर की, तो अगर हम एम्प्लॉय डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर को बढ़ाते हैं, जबकि हमने बात की, जैसे सर ने भी बात की कि वो एम्प्लॉयज की हम बात कर रहे हैं जो असेंबली लाइन में वर्क कर रहे हैं, शायद नई टेक्नोलॉजीज आ रही हैं वो उनको टेक्नोलॉजी से यूज़ करना नहीं आ रही। तो अगर हम देखें तो प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी पे तो हमारा कोई इफेक्ट नहीं आया। मेन इफेक्ट जो है जिनकी वजह से हमारी नेट इनकम कम हो रही है वो दो चीज़ें हो सकती हैं। एक तो सेल्स उतने पेस से इंक्रीज नहीं हो रही है जितने पेस से हमने अपनी प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी इंक्रीज की है। दूसरी चीज कि हमारे जो एक्सपेंसेस हैं या कॉस्ट हमारी बहुत ज्यादा होगी। तो अब इस चीज के लिए मैं समझता हूँ कि दो चीजें हो सकती हैं। या तो आपके पास जो इंडस्ट्री की सिचुएशन है वो आपकी प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी के इंक्रीज करने, आपके एम्प्लॉयज के इंक्रीज करने या आपके एम्प्लॉय डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर को चेंज करने को सपोर्ट नहीं कर रही। दूसरी चीज ये हो सकती है कि आपकी जो मार्केटिंग स्ट्रेटेजीज है अपनी इंडस्ट्री में, अपनी मार्केट में, टारगेट मार्केट के लिए, वो सूटेबल नहीं है या उनको चेंज करना चाहिए, इसकी वजह की सेल्स नहीं आ रही। तो मेरे ख्याल से ये दो रीजंस पॉसिबल हो सकते हैं जिसकी वजह से हमारी नेट इनकम कम हो रही है।
हेलो
जी खालिक।
मैडम मुजम्मिल की बात के साथ तक सही है। आई एग्री समाउ विद मुजम्मिल। और इसमें ये है कि इसका मसला सेल का उसका नहीं है। इसका मसला ये है कि अगर 2016 को हम कंपेयर करें तो 2018 से, तो उसके मतलब एक दूसरे एक्सपेंस बढ़ते जा रहे हैं, कंपनी के एम्प्लॉय डेवलपमेंट के बढ़ रहे हैं, मगर कोई फायदा कुछ कुछ नहीं है। इसका मतलब कि ये जो मसला हो रहा है ये टॉप मैनेजमेंट में कुछ आ रहा है। जैसे कि अगर हम एप्पल को एनालाइज करें तो एप्पल वही सेम कंपनी थी, ठीक है। पहले मतलब कि क्लोज वाइंड अप हो रही थी, मगर अचानक उसके पास सीईओ आ गया जो मतलब उस कंपनी को बूस्ट अप करके गया। उसकी सेल्स वगैरह हर चीज बढ़ गई, उसकी स्ट्रेटजी चेंज हो गई, उसका जो मिशन गोल था वो अब सब हो गया। तो इसका भी यही सेम मसला हो सकता है कि मतलब कि यहाँ तो इसके जो गोल्स हैं, जो इसने मिशन सेट किए हैं उसके हिसाब से ये काम नहीं करे, या तो इसका जो सीईओ है उसको खुद नहीं पता है कि उसने सही तरह खुद आइडेंटिफाई नहीं किया कि उसका गोल क्या है, उसका मिशन क्या है और वो किस तरह से काम कर रहे हैं, उसका प्रोसेस क्या है। तो ये उस टॉप लेवल पे जो मसला आ रहा है जो मुझे लग रहा है।
That's great. So अगर हम एक चीज कंक्लूड करना चाहें इस पूरी कॉन्वर्सेशन से जो हमने की, instead of focusing of what was the problem from this whole exercise, forget about the problem, right, in the company. What we can conclude from this whole thing with regards to strategy, evaluation, and control. One takeaway.
सर व्हाट आई थिंक कि ये जो मतलब जो कमाल कंपनी है ये मतलब स्ट्रेटजी को सही तरह से एनालाइज और evaluate नहीं कर पा रहे कि तभी वो अपने मतलब कि
Okay. But can we also safely conclude that just one or two measures of performance are not enough for us to
हेलो
conclude anything about the company?
आवाज आ रही है?
That's what I was saying
So
earlier,
I
that
think
there will be more data necessary to
जी
actually
जी।
conclude something about a company's
we need
performance.
another data, कुछ और डेटा शेयर किए जाएं, बट अगर इसी डेटा पे देखा जाए तो मेरे ख्याल से ये कंपनी सही तरीके से काम कर रही है। बिकॉज अगर नेट इनकम भले इंक्रीज नहीं हो रही है तो वो एम्प्लॉइज डेवलपमेंट एक्सपेंडिचर को पर यूनिट पर्सपेक्टिव में, पर यूनिट वाइज में देखा जाए, नॉट कम्युलेटिव, तो ये अपने आप को कंट्रोल कर रही है। ये किसी भी तरीके से कॉप अप कर रही है सिचुएशन से। इवन their प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी इज इंक्रीजिंग, but with the change in the sales is not approximately of same proportionate, and the
Ji.
net income is also not in a same proportionate, but still they are coping up in reducing their expenditure, especially the employee development expenditure. But again, this is just a piece of few numbers. थोड़े से
Okay, so
डेटा है, हम we can conclude it.
Great, great. So I have few quick questions, and I just want quick answers. So which one of these, where do you find financial data in this chart? Where is the financial data?
Sales, net income, employee development expenditure, these are all financial data.
Hmm.
Okay, okay. So where is the
Sales
production?
net income. Sales
Where
and
is the
net income.
where is
Yes,
production
sales, net
data?
income.
Where is
It's in
production data?
production capacity, but we are not actually getting to know how much they have actually produced. We just know that the production capacity they have this much, and they just have to maintain that. So that could also be reflected by employees somehow, but mainly production capacity.
Okay. Where is HR data?
Employees.
Employees and employee development expenditure.
Employee development expenditure. It's again
Okay.
HR related thing.
Okay. Do you see any OPEX or CAPEX items here?
तो आवाज मैसेज मुझे आमिर
Production capacity, increasing the production capacity might have led to capital expenditure, and if you look at the employee development expenditure, they might be in the operating side because we have to keep the operations and keep investing it in one way or other. So there is some data, but not enough.
Okay, good. So let's conclude from here one thing, which is about the next chart, that when you look at a company, and if you just try to look at very few financial measures of performance, probably that's not good enough to really understand the strategy, evaluation, and control of that company. We have to look beyond basic few financial parameters. Do we all agree on that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's try to evaluate that one by one. And here I will share my experience with all of you. And then we will have, questions about whatever is in your mind. So one of the reasons why the world moved from basic financial parameters towards a system of balanced scorecard was the main factor that just financial performance does not allow you to learn about what is happening inside the company. And you actually need to take a look at several different measures so that you can really understand, evaluate, and control the strategy of the company. And then you generate a feedback and take it back to the formulation stage, and then again kind of implement it, test it, and come back, right? So the first measure is financial, and that is all about how our shareholders are looking at us, right? The people who have invested in our company. And it's all about financial parameters, performance, and effective utilization of resources. So यहाँ पे कुछ if you guys could share some of the parameters that come to your mind randomly. Sif, I just want to hear the names of the parameters that come to your mind that are measured to measure the performance of a company. Ji.
Net income.
Cash flow statement.
Financial terms में ना.
जी financial performance.
Financial performance के लिए ratios होते हैं.
Ratios.
Quick asset ratio, quick cash ratio, quick asset ratio, and
debt to equity ratio.
Yes, the liquidity ratio. These are the types
ROI,
of ratios. The debt ratio.
return on investment, return of equity.
Yes.
That is the financial data that should be shared with, and dividend per share. It's also that shows the financial strength of the company and its position, comparing it with the other competitors.
Great, great. So we are almost there, right? Perfectly fine. So let me give you a quick brief about a lot of things that are practically measured in the real world, and I'll just add some of my inputs on that. So one of the financial performance measure is orders. So how many orders do you have in hand, right? And why orders are very important is that they create a backlog. So for example, if you're running a company and you have a backlog, let's say $3 billion, then you seem to be in good shape, because you know that when you start the next year, you will enter with a backlog of $3 billion, and that would let you know that you have execution items, you have people to be supported in terms of salaries and all that, your expenses will be covered, and orders is a very good barometer to test the health of a company. So that is very important. If you see a company where you see no orders in the backlog, that means the company has to really work hard in terms of sales and marketing to generate enough leads and convert them into orders. So orders is a very important matrix. Uh, the next item is sales. So sales is different from orders. So how much of sales you have done, how much of products you have shipped this year and invoiced, how many service items you have taken care of and invoiced, what kind of sales you have generated. So the difference between orders and sales is order you receive as a purchase order in the name of your company or your business, and sales is when you actually deliver something and you invoice. Sales tell you how much sales you have booked in that particular year in terms of invoicing and all that. The next important parameter is, of course, net profit or NI or net income. That tells you about, after meeting all the expenses, all the liabilities, how much profit you have earned. And that is very, very important. Just understand that the net income levels are very different based on the industry. So for example, if you are dealing with manufacturing industries, your margins would be relatively higher. If you are dealing with the service industry, your margins should be very, very high. And if you are dealing with retail, then your margins could be very, very low. So, but again, your margins could be low, but you may be making more of margin dollars. As I just mentioned to you in the beginning, if you are earning more volume on retail sales, then with, let's say, 5% of the margin, you can earn much more margin dollars compared to that. So don't think that a manufacturing business that makes 25% margin, gross margin, and a service business that makes a 65% gross margin, and there's a retail business that makes 10% or 7% gross margin, they are good or bad. No, you have to look at the different dynamics of the businesses, right? So it is not possible that a business which is a fertilizer business, you start comparing its margin with, let's say, someone who is a retail business. So their margins will be different according to the industry, and they are different. The next important area is cash, right? And cash is very, very important. So think of cash like a company which is holding a very large plant, and their property, plant, and equipment value is very high. They have assets, they have investments in everything. But if they do not have cash to pay to their vendors and to pay the salaries to people, then they will go bankrupt. They will be liquidated, right? And they may still be having assets. And that's one of the challenges for a lot of companies these days, that they may be large companies, they may have very large manufacturing units, but they do not have enough cash flow because a lot of people do not manage their working capital or the free cash flow in a good way. And this is why it is so important for a finance manager to make sure that there is enough cash in the company to meet the payments of vendors, suppliers, and pay the salaries of the people. So the companies right after COVID-19, who immediately started suffering within the first month, either they were not very liquid companies, they did not have adequate cash to manage and maintain the situation, or probably there was not enough financial prudence in terms of keeping cash with you so that you can take care of your liabilities. So cash is very, very important. The next area is return on equity. So if you are an owner and if you have invested money into a business, how much of a return are you going to get from that business, right? And that's very, very typical. A lot of people, from a personal financing standpoint, they understand it very, very clearly. From a company standpoint, not many people understand because it all depends upon whether it's a private company, it's a public company, it's a listed company. But again, the amount of money that you are putting in, what kind of return you will get on that. That's also a very, very important investment. Then you have return on investment. So total investment that has been made on a business, right? An investment is different from equity. Equity is something that you put from your pocket or whatever the amount of money that you have. But an investment is overall investment that could come from anyone. So how much investment people are going to make. The next important parameter is EPS, or earning per share. So for a listed company, when they report their results, they always talk about return in terms of earnings per share. So you take the net income, and which is earning, and you divide it by the number of outstanding share, and you get the earning per share. and that tells you that on an individual basis, per share basis, how much income the company is going to make overall. Another parameter that tells you about the health of a company is the share price. So what's the stock price of the company today, right? But again, as we are talking about both sides of a lot of these parameters, understand that many times the share price is not a true reflection of the company itself, because many times stock markets could be speculating on the higher side, or they could be depressed. So for example, a company which has a solid performance, your stock price may take a dip because the overall investor sentiment in a country or in a region or in the world is down. So if you look at the stock price of a company, many times it's not a true reflection. It is, and that's why if you recall some of the discussions that happen in the programs of these investors, they always say, oh, the PE ratios are high. And that's where you try to see that for, let's say, fertilizer sector, what's the PE on an average for the industry? And if there is a company which is trading higher or lower, based on that, you decide if the company is overpriced or underpriced, and where you are going to get the value from the investment. So many times this also happens that if the company announces expansion, then the stock market investors feel very happy about it and they jack up the price. And many times the price is jacked up well before the earnings are received. And this is all because of the factor that stock market looks at the future potential of the company and tries to incorporate that today. That's a very, very interesting phenomenon. Another important financial metrics is market cap. So what is the market cap value of the company? So here you take the stock price multiplied by the number of outstanding shares, you calculate the market cap. Market capitalization tells you what's the value of a company, right? So you hear about trillion-dollar companies these days. Some of the companies internationally have crossed the trillion-dollar benchmark. These are the companies which are market, in terms of market value, are considered very, very high. Then you have some other examples, such as, for example, these days people talk about economic value added parameter, right? Or the market value added parameter. So these parameters are not very complex. For economic value added, all you have to do is you take the profit and you say, okay, so I make a profit, but I probably have borrowed some money and there is a cost of capital involved. So anytime you do business based on borrowed money, and this happens all the time in large companies, then you take the profit, you subtract the cost of capital, and then you get the economic value added. That's the real profit that you make. And in terms of MVA, or market value added, you take the combination of stock plus debt, and you reduce the invested capital, and that's where you get the market value added. So, and then you have so many financial ratios like inventory turnover and things like that. So think like this, that these are so many financial parameters, and you have to take a look at everything and then come up with a holistic view of the whole thing. But is this enough? We don't know yet, right? So, and I'll allow you lots of questions, don't worry about that, but I just want to complete this in flow. But beyond financials, you also have to look at an internal business perspective. So what is your core competency? What is something you are really good at, right? Compared to your competition, that provides an internal business perspective. So from this perspective, you have to see, so you guys are in Sakkar right now. So if we drive, let's say from Sakkar towards Machigod, then we find that, many companies are over there. FFC, Mirpur Mathilo is there. Engro fertilizer is over there. Then you have power plants and all that. So it is very important at these power plants that environment, health, and safety standards are maintained. There should be no serious consequences of any gas leaks and all that, because that's going to create a lot of problem with regards to EHS. If you try to recall the Macondo well oil leak for British Petroleum in many years ago, in that oil leak, British Petroleum cumulatively had to pay till now, the liabilities are close to $65 billion. And just imagine that when that accident happened roughly a decade ago, their sales number at that time was roughly $300 billion. And the margin was in the range of $10 to $11 billion. And in the last decade, their liability swelled to almost $65 billion. So with one EHS incident, the company can either be closed or it can lose its profits for almost like many, many years. So you have to measure environment, health, and safety. That's why if you go to some of these plants, very proudly they demonstrate how many hours they have run the plant without any safety incident. Then the customer quality, the product that you are trying to sell to the customer in terms of the quality. So if there is a power plant, are they going to give you reliable power? Not fluctuating power? Are they giving you power which is available all the time, 24 by 7, 52 weeks a year? Or is it like missing, or there are disruptions in power, or the quality of power is bad? If it's a fertilizer plant, the prill that they are producing in the bag of the fertilizer, is it good? If it's retail product from, let's say, a giant retail outlet, let's say Khadi. So every time you buy something from them, is it the same consistent quality? So you have to measure the quality. Quality measurements are done through Six Sigma measurements. Many times Six Sigma is used to do quality measures. Then you have to take a look at the cost of goods sold and cost of overall operation. How you can improve the cost, right? How you can appropriately allocate the cost. And that's where the concept of ABC costing comes up. ABC costing is very simple to understand. So imagine you have two businesses. One business is very large. It is probably 90% of your sales, and there is another business which is 10% of your sales. Now, if because of the resource optimization, you put the two businesses together in one very large complex, and then you take the rent of that facility, electricity of that facility, internet charges, and etc., etc., and you just divide it between the two businesses without proper allocation, then the business which is a smaller will actually have going to have more cost than it actually deserves to have. So ABC costing is all about making sure that you allocate the right amount of cost according to the value that a business is producing or creating in terms of different business units. So that's the way it goes. The next area for measurement in internal business process could be the productivity. So what is your productivity? I mean, something that you are producing, at a higher productivity rate compared to your competition, you will be able to, generate lots of cost savings. Then cycle time. So if you are, let's say, an e-commerce facility, and two e-commerce facility get the same order, how quickly you can deliver to the customer and make them happy. So here in this particular area, I mean, you can think of a company like, for example, Southwest Airline, very, very famous for optimizing cost, right? GE has very large programs on Six Sigma, which have been implemented in so many companies across the world. Motorola had those type of programs, right? So internal business process, how you optimize internally, improve cost, create quality benefit for the customer, and move on. Now, the third area that you have to see is customer. So how the customer is viewing you. You may be great in your mind, but is your customer really happy about it? How are you going to measure that? So as part of Six Sigma, there is a VOC survey that's done. VOC stands for Voice of Customer. So you do surveys with the customer. You invite the customers to your facility, or you visit them, or you arrange conferences and seminars or virtual events, and you listen to them. You ask good questions, you collect data, and based on that, you decide what is supposed to be done. Every time you deliver a product to them, every time you deliver a service to them, you conduct NPS surveys to measure the customer happiness. Net Promoter Score is a method that's adopted by GE and some of the other companies in the world that measures who are the customers who will promote you, who are the customers who will just stay neutral, and who are the customer who will go back and say bad things about you because they're unhappy with you. So how do you increase your customer face time and other time? How you improve delivery? How about your customer return and complaint handling process? Now, I hear all the time from people that one of the areas where there is a lot of improvement requirement is how to handle the return process in e-commerce. So if you receive something with one of the e-commerce platforms locally, the return processes are a pain point. How do you solve that pain point and make sure that the customer is happy with what you do? And the fourth area, which is very important, so finance, internal business perspective, customer. Now, innovation and learning. Are you a learning organization? Are you going to create value through your knowledge workers in the organization? Do you adopt the right set of technology? Do you have the adequate human capital? Are you implementing an open culture in your company where people actually talk to each other openly, free float the idea without any fear of, rebuttal and all that? So how you develop leadership, how you make sure that employee engagement is performed. So how do you measure that? By doing employee engagement surveys, and you calculate how much employees are engaged, and then you make an action plan, and based on that, you move on and do things. Do you have training programs in the company? Do you create an annual and quarterly training development program? Do you train people on the production or the core operations? Also, do you train and develop people on the soft skill? So somebody may be a great engineer, but that person needs to develop a skill on presentation skill, right? Somebody may be a great manager, but that person may need to develop emotional intelligence. Do you have senior people in the company who mentor younger people, right? Do you have younger people in the company who reverse mentor the seniors? Because, only young people know what they want. So they have to come up, sit with the seniors and do reverse mentoring and tell them what they want to know, what they want to hear. Now, how do you do internal communication in the company? How do you talk to your people? Are there quarterly reviews? Are there town hall meetings every year or every 6 months? Who collects the feedback from employees? Who takes the actions from that? And how do you measure the performance of employees? Do you have a system of goals and objectives that you start in the middle of, or in the beginning of the year? Then do you conduct a mid-year review in the middle of the year? Do you have a final year performance review? Do you promote people on merit? Do you have a meritocracy in the company? What's your succession planning program? So if somebody leaves today, do you have someone within the organization who is going to replace that person or not, right? And culture is very, very important. I mean, just imagine, I was talking in a conference on 16th of June, and it was about digital transformation. And I just shared one number with them. Probably it's relevant here as well. It's a PwC study. It says that 75% of change initiatives will fail, all due to a lack of a digital culture, right? So culture is very, very important. Imagine that you create a great strategy, but you do not do great execution and you fail. And we all understand companies have great strategy documents which are never put to practice. And that's a huge challenge. So coming back to the next point, it's about, if you sum up this whole thing, then this balanced scorecard system is adopted by a lot of companies. And as you can see from these percentages and data and some of the things that I just practically shared with you, you will see that all of those things are over here. But I think the most important thing that you have to keep in mind is that you never take a concept as it is and just apply it in your situation. Always try to understand how much relevance is there between the concept and what you do, and then you combine the two and change it, right? And never take it as a cookbook approach. Always try to see how you can adopt it, how you can adapt it according to your atmosphere, environment, business practices, and all that. So that's the way to go about it. And a lot of companies today, they actually look at a wider picture of the challenges and the problems. So it's beyond financial ratios. It's about developing internal business processes, core competencies. It's about making sure you have the best customer service in the place. In fact, customer service is replaced with another thing which is called customer centricity. That means that you do not have a flat across the board batch and blast service for all the customer. No, you actually understand the customer, you create the persona of the customer, and you treat the customers differently. Because there is a basic minimum customer service that you provide to everyone, but then you take customers individually, and then you say this customer needs X and this customer needs Y, and that's called customer centricity. And finally, as I said, block number 4, it's all about leadership development, pipeline development, learning, innovation, creativity, culture, human capital, technology. So these are all the things that they are going to create core competency, and eventually you'll be able to create strategic differentiation in action. And that is something that actually takes your organization to the next level, which is the level of excellence, right? So that's all. I just wanted to have a quick debrief. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'm all yours for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
It
sir.
was a wonderful presentation and the session that we did today. First of all, I would like to say that. And secondly, my first question is about the digital trend that you talked about, that most of the companies are actually going digital. But if we look at the environment in Pakistan, because most of us are going to, actually, I do have a business that is on a small level, but it's very difficult for me to digitalize it, to automate it, because I work in the agriculture industry, and that has to do with there are no standardized practices, there are no standard prices, there's nothing like that that I can manage it. But what should be the insights for an industry like Pakistani that is underdeveloped in terms of technology, in terms of the human capital that is actually lower income as compared to that of the global standards like that of US and UAE. So, what is the takeaway for Pakistan in this? How Pakistan can come to the Pakistani companies can develop, particularly small medium enterprise.
So if I understand your question, you basically are saying that how do we develop SME sector in Pakistan uh, from
Exactly,
uh,
exactly.
from a digital transformation perspective, right?
Yes, because we don't have that of a developed infrastructure in terms of digital transformation or technology in Pakistan, particularly.
Okay, so the first few important things that we have to understand is that where we stand. So in terms of tele density, we are above 75% in Pakistan, right? Our telecom structure is far superior than a lot of countries in the world. And one more thing that we have to keep in mind is that our number of cell phone users, whether smartphone or normal phone, is a good number, right? A lot of people are using it. That's one thing. The second thing is these are the advantages or the positive things. The next important thing for us to understand is that one area where we probably need to do a lot of work, is to collect data. We need to find ways to collect data and kind of become companies who actually are very comfortable with data. So once you have the data, only then you can make meaningful conclusions out of it. So think like this, that if you go and start collecting data and start automating it, start putting it in, even I would say Excel, and try to generate, somebody used a word which I really liked, and it was about pattern. So first generate patterns and then recognize patterns. So when you say people are data science, what is a data scientist? Data scientist is nobody except a person that if you put data in front of that person, very soon the person will find the trend. So whoever captures the trend first is the one who actually moves faster than other people. So I would say the step one should be data collection, and then try to interpret the data using the tools and techniques that are available. For example, regression analysis, you can do all regression analysis in Excel, or you can use other softwares as well. Excuse me. And then based on that, you can make conclusions. So I would say the first step in moving digital is to collect data, store it, and start making conclusions out of it before you move forward. And then the rest, creating apps and those things, basic apps and all those things can all be done locally. They shouldn't be a problem, and they're not very expensive. But I would say collecting data, understanding and interpreting it is very, very important.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay, sir. Any other
You're welcome.
question? कोई सवाल करना चाहे? जी नाजिया, आप कुछ पूछना चाह रही हैं?
मैडम इरशाद ने मैसेज किया है। इरशाद को एक सवाल है सर से।
जी जी।
इरशाद का सवाल है कि व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम विद आवर पाकिस्तान स्टील पीआईए रेलवे एनवीपी, इज देयर मैनेजमेंट फेल्योर और स्टडी फॉर्मुलेशन और इम्प्लीमेंटेशन इशू?
Dr. Gulafsha, can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear exactly. थोड़ी सी आवाज ब्रेक हो गई।
जी खालिक, दोबारा बताइएगा।
What is the
Is
problem
there,
with
what is
our
the problem with Pakistan
steel
Railways?
PIA,
जी,
railway
Pakistan
and
Steels,
NBP,
Pakistan Railways, PIA, and
NBP?
NBP.
National Bank of Pakistan.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Actually, the question is that what is the problem with our Pakistan Steel, PIA, Railway, National
Hmm.
Bank of Pakistan? Is
Hmm.
there management failure or a strategic formulation or implementation issues with these organizations?
Okay, I
So,
got
Sir,
you.
आप
All
what
these
is
are
in
public
your
companies.
perspective?
जी
Yeah,
sir,
all are the public companies,
One common
government-owned
thing, all are
companies,
public companies. Like public, not in the sense of stock listed,
जी
but managed by
or in
government.
a government-owned. Hmm.
जी देखिए पब्लिक सेक्टर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के जो challenges है ना, you don't think only about Pakistan, you take it about globally, right? So public sector organizations have almost similar kind of challenges all over the world. Now the main challenge with public sector organization is that when an organization is a public sector organization, typically, the role of a government in any country is to create jobs. One of the roles. They have many roles as a government, but one of the key roles for a government is to create an environment in the country where people are on jobs, right? They create jobs. So if a government owns an institution in terms of public sector, there is always a tendency in governments all over the world to create jobs for people, right? And sometimes under employment pressures, unemployment pressures in the community, in the societies, in the countries, the governments sometimes overhire people, right? So when the people are overhired, that means we just saw an example before. So you don't, you need, let's say, 2 people to do a job, and you hire 3 or 4 people or 5 people to do that. And sometimes you also don't take care of the criteria for hiring. As we just talked about, we were talking about leadership development, we were talking about performance management systems, evaluating people and all that. So when you do that, you actually build a lot of inefficiency into the organization. And as a result of that, over the period of years, the organization start to deteriorate. And this is a global phenomenon. I mean, government has a role to create jobs, right? But when it comes to the private sector, their role is to create the maximum shareholder value. So they go on the other extreme. But in this process, they are able to create competitive people who, if even leave one company, they can go and join another company, right? Because they do not, generally, private sector doesn't produce complacency. So they create people who, if leave one company, they can join another company because they invest in people, they train them, they develop them. So I think the answer is pretty simple. It's about the fact that because the government's role is typically to increase employment, sometimes under that mandate, they add more people into the process, and sometimes the criteria of their merit hiring and all those things, they get bypassed. And this is a phenomena that happens all over the world. And as a result, organizations become inefficient, to the point where you get to see the type of results that you are talking about. So I think that's the way for those things. And that's why one of the things that a lot of people suggest, especially when the foreign institutions come and they try to advise, the first thing that they say is you have to privatize, right?
Yeah,
And when it comes when you talk
as
about
the organizations.
when you talk about privatization, the first thing that comes into discussion is reducing the number of employees. That's the first thing
Yeah.
that comes into discussion, right? So this all it's all about the factors that I just tried to mention. So hope this answers your question. But remember, this is a global phenomenon. It just doesn't happen in Pakistan.
कोई और सवाल है?
Well, sir, I just have a question over that. I read a book. It was Why Nations Fail by Robinson and Asim, when they were talking about inclusivity. The institutions should be inclusive in order to grow the economy. When we talk about public companies, they are supposed to actually help governments in managing their expenditures because they ultimately generate the revenues for the government. So is it only about the operational inefficiencies, like hiring a greater number of people, that will ultimately lead you towards that, or is it about having a proper check and balance and control mechanism? Because the employees you have, are they performing up to the mark or not? To me, हमारे पास यहाँ पे जो आम perception ये है कि भाई government की job मिल जाएगी, life is easy, you don't get to do much, and like आपको कुछ करना नहीं पड़ेगा और आपको तो तनख्वाह पे बैठ के मिलेगी. So is it more about the control mechanism, check and balance, or is it about the operating inefficiencies by hiring more people? I think that the problem is behind the management. Along with, yes, it is a problem that there are a lot of people and you don't need much of the people. It is like under efficiency or आपकी उस पे effect पड़ेगा. लेकिन management is another thing that is the main problem, I think, rather than having lots of people.
So of course, I just added a point when I was giving the answer that when we talked about the fourth area, which was leadership development, innovation, and all that, I talked about performance management systems, right? Meritocracy.
Yeah.
I specifically talk about meritocracy and performance management system. So a lot of people globally believe that if they are into a government job, they are there forever, right? And they believe
Job security.
it's a safe, secure job. And once people know that they are into a safe, secure job, and at the same time, the performance management system works in a certain way based on seniority, number of years, protocols, and all that. There are a lot of people would say, well, you know what, if I cannot get that position in less number of years, why do I work hard? So that's why it is very, very important that you create incentive in a way that people are incentivized to work. So always
Exactly.
remember that you actually get from the people in a company what you incentivize, right? So if you try to, if you want to get maximum productivity from people, then you give them rewards. You tie up their performance pay. You give them medals for doing productivity. But if you want productivity, but you reward something else, number of years of service, then you will get number of years of service. You're not going to get productivity. So incentive system is very, very important. And look, as you grow the number of people under the pressure of increasing employment in the country, then of course it is very hard for you to implement meritocracy and effective performance management system. And it is not only reflected at the worker level, it is reflected in the middle level and at the top level as well. So it's a combination of issues, but I just tried to tell you that where it all starts. It all starts from the fact, and that's why one of the, some of the economists, they believe that running company is not a job of the government, it's a job of the private sector. Some economists always believe that all the businesses should be run by a private sector, right? But again, there are many debates and discussions and arguments in favor and against this philosophy of economists.
Also, one of the argument is that it's not the job of government to create the jobs, but the job of government is to facilitate the sector or the industry that will ultimately create the jobs for the people. So, not creating government jobs, but actually facilitating the private industry that will ultimately lead to increase in in the jobs in the market for the people.
Look, what I have learned is, if you want to take my personal view, then governments all over the world, the key role that they can play in any development sector is to create conducive policies and frameworks that allow any industry or any sector to grow. That's the best thing a government can do, right? So if we take the example of this famous shale gas revolution that happened in the US, and because of which there is abundance of gas and oil in the US, and because of which there is so much of supply which has outnumbered demand. When this revolution actually began, it began when the US government started to give a lot of incentive, research support, funding, and budgets to the shale industry, not now, but starting late 70s, during the 80s, during the 90s. Now the suddenly solar revolution, how it started, because the US government started to get relief to the solar industry and created policies about that. So if you suddenly if you suddenly offer, let's say, reduce costs for a certain industry, or you issue a government policy or framework that, let's say, if you create a company which will export AI based, artificial intelligence based software to the Western world, there will be no tax on you for the next 5 years. You are going to see a mushroom growth of artificial intelligence based export software, right? So this is what you incentivize. This is exactly what you get. So yeah, it's a job of the government to create conducive policies and frameworks to grow sectors and industries.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, sir. थैंक
You're
यू।
welcome.
आई एम रियली थैंकफुल टू यू कि आपने बिजी स्केड्यूल से टाइम निकाला हमारे लिए एंड यू एग्री टू शेयर योर एक्सपीरियंसेस एंड नॉलेज। इट वाज वेरी इंसाइटफुल। There is one thing that I want to ask you, being a president and CEO of a consulting firm, what advice would you like to give to my students, or to overall students even, not only these students but for the students?
Uh, with regards to like building a career, or with regards to consulting, or
Yes, sir. If someone wants to pursue consulting, if you could say anything.
oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so look, one of the best things that you can do is after you complete your education or degree, I would say go and work in a great company, great manager, and a place where you actually learn a lot of things. Now, there are two school of thoughts here. One is you go work for a startup if you're looking for creativity, innovation, dreams, and passions, right? But at the same time, if you work in a bigger sized corporate, like the Engros and the ICIs or the PNGs, you learn a lot of systems and processes and procedures and how the business is run. Once you go through that path, and you learn how to do business, and you're well versed, with the corporate systems and all that, you can always come back to startup, or you can start from a startup as well. It's really your passion, whatever you like to do. But once you excel into something and you do the hard work, then that's the right time that you decide in future whether you like to pursue a corporate career, which is also fine in my view. I always say 9 to 5 job is fine, startup is fine. It all depends what makes you happy and what takes you towards the direction of your dream. So I would say there's no shortcut to hard work. People keep telling me smart work has replaced hard work, but I don't know if Dr. Gulafsha can tell us that if there is a 300-page book,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's the smart way to read 300 pages. I think it's hard work. You have to read 300 pages, right? So,
Yeah.
so I don't know if there is smart work way to, maybe a shortcut that you just glimpse through a few things and take a chance in your exam. But if you have to do 300 pages, you really have to do 300 pages. So there's just no shortcut to hard work. Passion, dreams, not giving up. Life will throw many challenges at you. Many times you'll be disappointed. Don't give up. And if you are stuck in a situation where probably the boss is a tough person or the company is not treating you well, I remember everything passes away. Good times pass, bad times pass. Never think that if something is happening to you, it's happening to you only. Everybody gets his or her share of challenges in life. uh, Perseverance, resilience, grit, making sure that you stay on course all the time, never give up, keep moving forward and keep delivering, keep learning every day. I mean, learning is a lifelong journey. Make sure that you understand what is happening 10 years from now and you stay relevant for that. I mean, the nature of jobs is going to significantly change in the future of work. And my view is that beyond 2030, the game will be so different that a lot of people will not understand. And one final word, that disruption, people say it's coming. Disruption is not coming. Disruption is already here. It's already here. So you disrupt yourself or you get disrupted, right? I wish you all the best and in your lives and careers, inshallah.
थैंक यू सो
Thank
मच
you so
सर।
much, sir. Thank
थैंक
you
यू
so
सो
much.
मच। आप लोगों में से कोई कुछ कहना चाह रहा है? Anyone who wants to say anything? Otherwise हम फिर सेशन एंड करें।
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so everyone is thankful to you.
Oh, they are most welcome. You are most
So it was
welcome.
a
And
wonderful discussion, a healthy discussion, and more of the orientation towards the industry rather than the kinds of things that we study. We actually, in our LS, go through research papers only, not lesser than the case study. So today we had a new outlook of these things and how to proceed. in terms of industry rather than only getting stuck to the research. But that pops up with to me a new question that we are the research students particularly. So what is the takeaway for us? Because what we'll be doing, some of us might go into the industry, but some of us might go in academia and pursue a research career. So what would be your point of view upon that? So how can we learn like being staying into the into the academia and delivering something that contributes to the industry?
I think that's a great question. And if you look at my profile, I have been a corporate person all of my life, right? But I have
Exactly.
studied as well a lot, if you see my profile. So I would say there are two important things. If you are a research student and tomorrow you decide to work in a company or a startup, then learn that how you translate your research learning into practical action plan. If you do that, your companies will love you. But if you will keep talking about every time there is a meeting and there's a discussion, and then you start bringing, oh, I read in a research paper, actually it will be a turn off for a lot of managers in your company, because they will say, oh, this person is a research person. Rather than saying that, you remember that practice, and then from that practice you generate an idea in the environment in which you are working, and then come up with an actionable idea. They will just love it. And you being a research student, you have seen so many situations and cases, and make sure that if there is something you learn in the airline industry and you are working in pharmaceutical industry, then learn how to take that practice from airline and use it in pharma. So that's one thing if you are going from research to corporate side. Now, if you choose to be a research person, maybe in a university or maybe in the research department of a company, then I would say that if you learn data sciences to the extent that you can take the data and create very interesting information in terms of using Tableau or Power BI or Excel or even PowerPoint, and then you
Or
can
SAS,
show to
Python, or R, these are the latest softwares
yeah,
that are
exactly.
available.
Yeah, you use Python, you use R, or you use Minitab. Many softwares are there, but you come up with a very nice information interpretation of data. So data which is unstructured is of no use, but when you structure the data and you glean information from it, using which the leadership can make a decision, they will just love you. So that's the way you can use this research knowledge. Don't limit it to the research, convert it into data, and from data you advise people that from this data I learned this, and this is the way you should be making decisions in the company. So either way, it's a perfect spot in the world where data sciences is going to rule for the foreseeable future of time.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So thank you so much, sir. I'm going to end the session. आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.
जी बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया जी. It was a real pleasure to speak with all of you, और I'm sure कि आपके जहनों में बाद में भी बहुत सारे सवाल आएंगे, because we spoke a lot of things. Time was limited, and डॉक्टर साहिबा आपके पास हैं, आप इनसे पूछिएगा, इनसे लर्न कीजिएगा. She is very dedicated and passionate about what she does. So thank you very much to all of you, and all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
जी हम भी सेशन एंड कर रहे हैं.
हम भी कर रहे हैं. ठीक है
मैम, क्लास होगी कल?
नहीं कल नहीं होगी. कल नहीं होगी. मैंने आपसे इसीलिए आज का टाइम लिया था, क्योंकि ये जो सैयद आसिम थे ये आज ही अवेलेबल थे, इसलिए फिर मैंने आपसे कहा था कि थर्सडे को कर लेते हैं क्लास. ठीक है.
ठीक है.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
थैंक यू. अल्लाह हाफिज.
Hafiz.